Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO Magazine. Today, I've got the pleasure of introducing Brian Evergreen. Brian is the founder and CEO of the Profitable Good Company, and is best known for his work advising Fortune 500 executives on artificial intelligence strategy. Brian has enhanced his experience by working with organizations such as Accenture, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft. Brian guest lectures at Purdue University and the Kellogg School of Management, where he shares his innovative methods and frameworks he's developed leading and advising digital transformation initiatives at many of the world's valuable companies. Brian is also the author of the upcoming book, Autonomous Transformations, Creating a More Human Future in the Era of Artificial Intelligence, around which we will be discussing three key elements during our interview. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much, Robert. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure, and we look forward to discussing your insights that you've learned along the way. So if I can ask, diving right in, what inspired you to write Autonomous Transformations?
Great question. I think what inspired me was when I first started working with organizational leaders at the C level in when Microsoft sent me in my position as the AI strategy lead for Microsoft US. When I started meeting with leaders to discuss setting their AI 2030 agendas, these questions kept coming up about things that weren't technology related. Like, what does it mean to be human in this era of AI? And how should I talk to my people and my unions and my, all these different, my whole ecosystem about these technologies and what they mean about the future, not just of our organization, but for all of us as people. And so I at first thought I'll go out and find the researchers that are already answering those questions.
Right.
So we worked with academics and different research institutions and found that they were we had a racy problem, right? Where different people were assuming that they would be consulted or informed,
Yep.
not necessarily feeling like they were accountable. And so that was that was many years ago. And then as I've continued to sort of navigate through different positions where I've continued to have those conversations with leaders, that's I've been accumulating those questions. And last year, when the opportunity to write a book came, I decided this is a perfect forcing function to do my best to answer those questions in a meaningful way.
So, in advance of the book, which is coming out August 1st, and you can obviously pre-order from Amazon, there were three main themes that we kind of have cottoned onto, or that you're kind of suggesting that we focus on. So the first theme is a new system of leadership in the era of AI. And I can tell you, it is a very interesting and stimulating discussion that organizations are having with ChatGPT coming out, and Barb,
Yes.
and a lot of other AIs are coming out, and people are beginning to realize, there's a lot out there. So starting off, how can data leaders sort of effectively navigate the challenges as well as the opportunities presented by the integration of AI into the organization structures and processes?
Great question. I think the new system of leadership I'm proposing is based on my observation that the majority of the leadership principles that make up our current system of leadership that's taught basically everywhere, and then not just in school, but also by experience in organizations, is made up of a quite a few inheritances that we've received from the Industrial Revolution
Yes,
that are
yes.
based on putting the system first and the human second. And that worked really well in the 20th century. And it just doesn't work now in the 21st century. And the cracks are starting to show between organizations that are attempting at and experimenting with new systems of leadership that put the human back at the center versus those that are continuing to sort of push down and try the analogy I give is it's like trying to summit a new mountain like Mount Everest, let's say, with building a steam train that's going to go all the way up to the top. And the tools that we have that come out of all of those rich experiences and that were valuable and form a foundation for us to grow from just don't work anymore. And so in terms of your question around how data leaders can be navigating these things, I think one of them is to first examine what are all the different ways that as I go throughout my work, starting with something where the human is not first. And by that, I mean, for
Right.
example, data driven. In a data driven mindset, the human is a computational resource and the data is therefore first. And not to say that data isn't valuable, data is extremely valuable. But
Sure.
if you extend beyond data driven to reason driven, which is a new paradigm that I'm proposing in the book, you move from putting the human, the data at the center and the human just happens to be a computational resource to the human reasoning of okay, and we make these social contracts as we go through our work. So you might have and most of us, anyone who's been in a leadership position has probably seen a proposal and thought the numbers aren't quite right, the data isn't
Right.
enough to justify it, but I love the vision. I think it's worth experimenting with. So I'm going to carve out the social, sort of using my social contracts and my social capital as a leader. I'm going to carve out the space for this person on my team to just run with this for right now, hoping it pans out in time. And if not, I'll take whatever the windfall is.
Right.
That's an example, but that's stepping outside of the current. What if we made that the mainstream instead, that we're going off of the reasoning of the humans that make up our organizations that we hired because they are experts and they're able to think beyond the data can only take us to the point of where we've already been. Now we're looking out into the future and we want to do something that's new that we can't model data for because the conditions are different. The proposed path is a new path. And so that's one example of that sort of paradigm shift.
I love the fact that we put humans first again, right? Because of our capability to make that leap of faith into where the data may potentially go, and it's a risk. It certainly is. But what is life if not a series of steps and leap of faith? So, but tell me, moving on, when we talk about our data leaders, what, in your opinion, what do you think are the key skills and the competencies that the data leaders today need to develop in order to really lead in the era of AI?
So I think the skills that are important, there's those that are obvious that we all know about, right? Being able to understand information and
Sure.
the idea of translating that information into insights, or as Cassie Korsakov says, making data useful, right?
Right.
That's a very fundamental. But that process of making that data useful involves, I think, some to your point of question about key skills. I think one of them is first and foremost empathy, because being able to understand, having empathy for your team members, empathy for the customer, empathy for your shareholders and your stakeholders, being able to understand what drives and motivates all of these different decisions that are being made. When the customer buys, what is the experience that they're having that leads them to buy, that we want to somehow improve, let's say, so that they buy more and have more value out of the thing that we're creating. And when my shareholders, or my stakeholders invest in what we're doing, what is it that their ultimate goal is, that we can tune our work to ensure that we're fitting correctly through that whole process, from the funds that are coming in to the value creation, the experience of the people doing the work within my organization, and so on. So I think empathy is really key. I think a second one is that I think is extremely important is storytelling. And that's another one that was kind of extracurricular, I think, or seen as extracurricular in 20th century leadership. That I think more and more our organizational leaders are starting to see now as core curriculum. Because if you have the best vision and the best strategy in the world, but you can't tell a story around that inspires and motivates or ties people to want to follow you there, then you're not going to achieve any level of transformation or achievement, the success that you're aiming for with your work. And so I think storytelling is another critical one. And then I think there's sort of the empathy and storytelling, and then they kind of come together in the sense that they're very closely tied, because again, you're starting with finding that vision, setting a vision for the future of the
Yep.
organization. So envisioning is a skill. I think people see envisioning as, or have seen it as, sort of like a magic crystal ball that only certain people are gifted with. But I look at it, especially from my experience and my background as being a competitive chess player and some of the positions that I've held, the people that are strong in the envisioning skill set have just had the experience of envisioning a future, trying to make it, failing. Okay, envisioning a new future, trying to make it, and just building that skill set the same way you build any other skill set. So I think being able to envision, and you might think, well, even just at the data level, right? If you're a data leader, that you might think, well, I'm trying to execute on a vision someone else had. But I would say even in that role, you still have lots of different things that you need to envision the future of your team. If you want to grow and you want to gain new capability, you need to envision if your leaders are saying, okay, here's where we want to go as an organization, how can data help us get there? That's still a strong active envisioning as part of that. And then obviously being able to tie that vision back to an overarching strategy and connecting that to meaning for the people in your organization of what they do, and how what they do is tied to that broader meaning and that vision for the organization. And the last thing I'll say is being able to lead data scientists or decision scientists is a very unique skill set. And
Yep.
by that, I mean, I often equate it to if you were to hire astronauts. And bear with me. So if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
hire astronauts, right, and you're going to have them come work for you, and there's two ways you can go about it. You can say you're going to go into outer space and you're going to explore new things and make breakthroughs of science. And then, we're going to pay you for that. And then other people will take all those breakthroughs and analyze and research on them and so on. The other way you could hire an astronaut is you could say, okay, I love this breakthrough that this astronaut made, and I want you to recreate it here so we can get 2% more efficiency within our organization. And there's no white paper to write about it because the breakthrough's been made. We just need you to recreate that. And it might be a couple of years of research, which for a data scientist is, maybe a 20th of their whole career that they'd be spending on this 2% efficiency thing. Right. And so I think a lot of organizational leaders sometimes miss the opportunity to tie, there's so many use cases that could be addressed and so many different types. So if you, of all those use cases and all those different types of initiatives that you want to set forth, if you can focus those that are academically minded and motivated by that underlying desire to make breakthroughs, focus use cases that could make a breakthrough, point them at those. And for others that aren't as interested in that and they just love manipulating data and they have a strong statistical or machine learning skill set, you can focus them on repeating the breakthroughs that others have made, and they won't have a problem with that. So that's an important clarification I'd also share.
So leadership, storytelling, and empathy are certainly part of the equation, as with the foundational knowledge that they have to be in order to be a data leader. Those are emerging or important topics that may have been something that may not have been as critical in the past, but certainly in the era of AI is going to take more and more presence because you'll be able to get more out of the individual, I would assume then is your the reasoning for that.
Yeah, I think that yes, you can get more. I think go further together with them. I might
Right.
say,
Yeah.
and the paradigm shift is partly based on the fact that now that we're in this information age where those people they could go find a new job tomorrow,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? If you were hiring somebody in 1990, there was no LinkedIn, there was no visibility. Like whoever their family network was, and maybe people they'd already met within
Right.
their sphere, that was the job opportunities they had, and so. Or their school and so on. And so, whereas now today, a data scientist or any kind of data individual can go find another. It's a hotly pursued talent resource, and they can go find another position quickly. So I think that being able to set that vision and tie meaning back into the work, which is a newer form, or it's not new in terms of it's existed forever, right? Even
Right.
all the way back into the Roman days and so on. We have accounts of people inspiring people to follow them and go do
Sure.
something, right?
Brian, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I know we didn't get into discussing much of the actual book, but it's on the Amazon. You can pre-order it.
Mhm.
So on behalf of the CDO Magazine, we appreciate you providing your thoughts and interpretations of how data leaders could be able to leverage autonomous transformations. And we hope that your book is a huge success and that we'll have you coming back and share your knowledge again on how harnessing artificial intelligence with its adjunct technology for the betterment of not only the organization, but also the world.
Thank you very much. I hope so too. And if so, I'll look forward to speaking with you again, Robert.
Uh, Me too. It was a wonderful interview. And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.